welcome to the Data Science Hangout. If you're joining for the first time, it's nice to meet you. I'm Rachel. The Data Science Hangout is an open space for the whole data science community to connect and chat about data science leadership, questions you're facing, and what's really going on in the world of data science. So the sessions are all recorded and shared to YouTube, as well as the Data Science Hangout site. So you can always go back and rewatch them and find helpful resources there. I try to take some of the suggestions and links in the chat and put them up with the recordings as well. But we also have a LinkedIn group for the Hangout too, if you ever want to continue a certain discussion. Tyler or Hannah can put that in the chat right now. But yesterday, Marcos had an idea of starting a show and tell, like our show and share thread in there every week. So if a side project you're working on or a cool tutorial or article you found. So maybe we can start those conversations going in that group too. But together at the Hangouts, we're all dedicated to creating a welcoming environment for everybody. So we love when everyone can participate and we can hear from all of you. So there's 3 ways you can ask questions here. You can jump in by raising your hand on Zoom. You could put questions in the Zoom chat and just put a little star next to it if you want me to read it, and I could call on you to introduce yourself and share some context. And then we also have a Slido link where you can ask questions anonymously too. And I'm sure you just shared that in the chat as well. So thank you. Just like to reiterate, we love to hear from everybody. So no matter your level of experience or the area or industry that you work in as well. But with all of that, I'm so excited to be joined by my co-host for today, Jay Sewell, Director of Analytics at Harry Rosen. And Jay, I'd love to just kick it off by having you introduce yourself and maybe telling us a little bit about your role, the company, and maybe also something you like to do in your free time outside of work too.
Sure. So like Rachel said, I'm Jay Sewell. I lead the analytics and data science practice for Harry Rosen. If you haven't heard of us, we're a kind of luxury men's retailer based out of Canada. So, the company's been in business for 68 years. We've had really an analytics practice for the last 12 or so. I was one of the first to kind of join as a junior analyst way back when, about 10 and a half years ago. At that point, we were really just, kind of slinging SQL queries for the marketing department and things like that. It was kind of, what you'd expect at a retail company in 2012 or whatever. And one of the things I noticed right off the bat was, we had this amazing data set, and we were really using it. We were kind of sharing it to some of the salespeople in the stores and things like that, but we weren't really like getting many insights from it. It wasn't being leveraged like it could be. So I kind of took it upon myself to show the business a little bit of what data science could do. And so through that, I've kind of raised through the ranks, and now I kind of lead the team. And yeah, I mean, we're an R shop, which is one of the reasons I'm kind of doing this. I love the language, I love the platform and the community, yeah. So we kind of have our hands in everything within the business, and we use R to power almost all of it. Yeah. And what was the other thing? Oh, something I do in my spare time. I love to cook. I'm a bit of a gourmand, so when I'm not, writing code or whatever, I'm typically cooking something. We actually moved out to the country. We're surrounded by farms. There's such good food around, so it's been amazing. Yeah, that's what I love to do. So
that's great. Thanks, Jay. I know when we were chatting a little bit earlier, you talked a bit about how you're thinking a lot about building a data-driven culture and what that really means. I'd love to hear how you're doing that.
I mean, how am I doing it? Well, so that's, like I mentioned, Harry Rosen's a pretty long-standing company. We have almost 70 years in the market. For a lot of that time, like I said, we weren't really using data the way we probably could, right? So part of growing a data science team is also growing a company that wants to use that data science team to its fullest. And to me, that's kind of, a really good starting point for a definition of a data-driven company. But so the challenge we're sort of facing is like, how do we teach people the skills they need to consume data, and at the same time, how do we produce products, however that kind of manifests itself, to so that they can learn and grow with that. And like, that's been our approach. I'd love to hear opinions from participants in the chat about like how they would conceptualize what a data driven company is. At the front of it, within the last few years, we've kind of eh, you know placed data-driven culture as part of one of our core values, right? We call it measure twice, cut once. Really kind of encapsulates part of that thinking. But you can't just say, we're going to do this. You actually have to do it, and you actually have to sort of build not only the knowledge, understanding, the data literacy, and the drive to use data, but then also the products, the data sets, the back end, everything that supports it. So yeah, I mean, how we've been doing it is kind of inching forward slowly but surely. So we do some lunch and learns and things like that with people in the company. We try to build products really iteratively. We took agile very seriously in the last couple of years to work really closely with people we're building products for, to try to deeply understand how they're approaching problems and how we could help them use data to approach those problems better. And we found that's been a positive kind of change in the way we've approached things. But yeah, it's an ongoing challenge, I think, and one that I don't think there's a specific formula to solve, but very happy to kind of hear suggestions and thoughts from participants in here about what they think, because
Yeah,
I think it's
absolutely.
important.
I see, Manju, you had unmuted for a minute. I wasn't sure if you were going to jump in and add some thoughts there too.
Sure, I always seem to have thoughts. But yes, I have experienced this quite a bit. I feel in my mind, if everybody has access to the information, there a lot of ideas get generated how to enable it for the whole organization. Many times we run into roadblocks of having access to particular sorts of information. But I feel if all the departments could have equal access, I think that would create like data-driven insights for the whole company.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. And actually, so one of the approaches we've sort of taken to that, and this is a long time ago, somebody convinced us to buy into Tableau. We've never really built much dashboarding on it, but what we have done is created data sets, kind of, and made them available to some people in various parts of the organization, that basically whoever wants it. And we'll sort of curate a data set and kind of make it available so that somebody from that team who has questions and is close to the problems they're working on also has sort of wide and unfettered access to some data about it, to try to kind of shorten the game of telephone between a question and an answer, so to speak. So I mean, that's been an approach, and I think it's actually been pretty successful, but it's hard to scale, and it's hard to find pockets of the business that and convince them to want and need that, because there's some training and whatever involved too. So but yeah, that's a really good point.
I'm curious to hear from you all, maybe in the chat too, but what data-driven means for you at your companies too. And Jay, how did you first start those conversations with the business users? I know you said you have like the lunch and learns, but is that across the whole company?
I mean, probably the first real attempt at starting to build this. We have a kind of senior leadership group within the organization, and kind of the part of that was, or the point of that, sorry, was to be able to share knowledge and kind of leadership wisdom and things like that across the company. So once or twice a year, we pull in leaders from all over the country. We do a presentation. I got a chance to kind of get up and you know, I think I titled my talk "The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Data Analysts" or something contrived like that. And I tried to kind of convince everybody that, like, no matter what their role, in some way, shape, or form, they're touching data, they're learning from it, and they're using it, and so they should learn some habits of what good data analysts do. So that actually got a little bit of traction going in terms of people being a little bit more open to talk to our team. I think we were sort of seen as you know, the pretentious or pedantic esoteric team that did all sorts of weird algorithms and whatever. So that kind of opened the doors, but really it's been a lot of frontline me approaching a team, trying to understand what they do, what their business problems and issues are, what challenges they're facing, and get them open to the idea that these aren't insurmountable, and sometimes there's data sitting right there to help them at least, you know, come up with answers quicker, easier, faster, better, whatever it is. So yeah, those conversations are very much, it's more of a pull from my end than it is a push right now. And although, you know, it's starting, that tide is starting to turn a little bit, which is great. But yeah, I've been out there kind of mining for business for our team, if that makes sense.
That's great. Can you give us an example of something that the team works on?
Sure. So like I said, we kind of service any area that needs it. For a long time, it was mostly the marketing team, just because, you know, from an audience generation targeting point of view, there's a lot of applications there, and we have a lot of good data about our customers and what they buy and that sort of thing. But lately, the focus has been more probably on store operations. So we built recently an app, a mobile app. We call it Real Time Pulse. It's basically just came out of a conversation where one of the operations leaders were like, I just need real time data. I need to get the pulse of the business. And we're just like, all right, you keep using those words. That's what we're calling the app. And it's really just, you know, a way of taking some of the reporting that was really slow or inconsistent or you know, weekly or something like that, and put it right directly in the hands of the store leadership. So they can pull up and see up to the second, what are the sales in the store? How are the various sales people performing? How are they tracking to their weekly goals and things like that? And this has just been an opportunity for us to kind of insert some, and this is all built in Shiny. And this has been an opportunity for us to sort of insert some insights and intelligence into those layers. So instead of showing them, you know, a big list of numbers, we were kind of trying to find what are the insightful, what are the important figures that you need to look at and pay attention to, so that you can make quick decisions throughout the day. So that's been probably one of our most impactful apps that we've built, and that's been probably our most widely used in terms of, like, you know, total hours of usage or whatever. So that's stirred a lot of excitement in the company, just in terms of what we could do for them. That's not so much more traditional reporting looking. So
Yeah, I was just thinking what Libby just said in the chat as well. It sounds like your data people sometimes have to be salespeople.
100%. Yeah. And getting in their shoes and understanding what they think about from day to day. And it's often not what you'd expect, you know, coming from a math background and computer science and things like that. The way you approach a problem is definitely different than the way somebody whose day to day is clienteling, dealing with people. So just trying to cross that barrier is sometimes a big challenge, but part of the fun of it, I think.
Yeah, I see, Andrew, you just asked a question in the chat. Do you want to jump in? Or I can read it. Andrew said,
And
oh,
sorry,
there you
I
are.
also
No
don't know
worries.
how to work the mute button. Either, so.
No worries. Welcome.
I was curious how you organize and prioritize the work, especially when there's multiple teams, departments that you're working with, and stakeholders. So there's not a single list that you're knocking out on, but you still have a single team that you're working with.
Yeah, I mean, prioritizing work is, it's like, what's that joke about the two biggest problems in computer science are cache invalidation and naming things? Well, the third one is like prioritizing your work, right? So, everyone thinks their thing is the most important thing. We have tried probably a dozen different ways to try to get agreement across the business on what our team should be building at any time. And what we finally kind of nailed it down to is, we give we give like a kind of value rating, t-shirt size value rating to something, and an effort size value rating to something, put it in a matrix, and then we open it up to our executive and say, tell us which ones you want us to do. And they go, I like this idea, I like that idea. If we have different opinions, we kind of present an argument, and then we come up with our priority for the quarter, and then we go on, right? How we get to that value statement is typically a lot of conversation with the team and trying to figure out what their challenge and what their business problem is actually, kind of how connected it is to something like sales or efficiency or things like that. And that's another part that I think like we're trying to get better at. I think we'll always try to get better at. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely, like I said, one of our biggest challenges is picking the right priorities and making sure we can stick to them. Like when, if someone else comes in and says, no, this thing is more important, we have to stick to our guns and know that like we picked the right thing all along, and like have a good argument, have a good logic behind that, so that we don't get sidetracked or bottlenecked and things like that. But yeah, great question.
It's really helpful. Thank you. I see, Eric, you asked a question as well. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'm happy to be back finally. I don't have a meeting at this time. Oh, it's a miracle. So my question is kind of loaded, but I know for experiences I've had in the past, sometimes it's easy to find a quick solution to a problem at hand, but maybe taking that extra time to pursue something that's a lot more innovative that might have not been done before can have big payoffs in the long run, but it might look a little risky. So I'm just curious for your group, how does your group feel empowered to take those kind of calculated risks to do something innovative? And how does the leadership feel about that kind of that tug and pull between getting something done quick versus maybe taking a little time up front to make something better maybe for the future as you solve a problem?
That's a great question. I mean, I feel, and maybe this is me kind of like with 10 years of elbowing out this kind of space around me to I feel empowered by our leadership, that they trust my judgment on that. And typically we will look at a project with two kind of pieces of value when we look at it. It's like, this is the value to the business problem, and this is the value to future work, right? So for example, if we're going to, approach a problem like, let's just put a linear model into Plumber and fire it off and whatever, and that's, going to get us 80% of the way there. Or we can develop a better data set, we can develop, et cetera, and we can turn that into a package that we might be able to use down the road. That future work value is taken into account, right? So I'll say, we'll spend 3 weeks instead of 1 week, or 2 months instead of 1 month on this, in order to be able to use this extensively in other projects. I have gotten a lot of, gotten a lot of leeway to allow our team to do that, because I think our executives sort of have seen the payoffs from that before. But that, that's always a challenge. But sometimes you just have to bring in the estimate with that in mind, rather than telling them that you could probably do some half-assed solution in a lot less time, because what it will bring to your team later, right? So yeah, I mean, I guess, that's kind of the answer is yes, I feel empowered, but also I don't always tell them the other, I don't always give them the option for the quick solution if we know we're going to get a lot of value out of the better one.
I've definitely done similar things. Sometimes they don't need to know everything, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I hope they don't find this on YouTube or else I'm in trouble. But
No, I've said worse things on my podcast, so you're fine.
okay, good to know.
I see, Jan, and apologies for mispronouncing your name, but that you asked a few questions in the chat. I'd love to have you ask those.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry I'm unable to do my video.
No
but,
worries.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jay. The way they describe you to collect your evaluation for your data value, I thought is a great process. Is really could stand as your base of make more value of your data selections. So according most of the time, your data, do you think that your data is belong to the business or belong to the public or belong to the data scientist or belong to the processing?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough question to answer, I guess, because we have a lot of data, right? And I don't think there's a really fine line between what I think belongs to, for example, definitely I wouldn't consider any of our data public in the sense that, most of it is customer data or related to customer data in some way, shape, or form, or it's product data and it's related to, a sweater or a pair of pants or whatever it is. And so, but is that data owned by the customer? In our kind of minds and the way we approach it, it absolutely is. In the sense that if a customer wants it, they can have it. No one's ever asked. If they want us to get rid of it, we have mechanisms to do so, and so on. But in terms of the sort of second part of your question, is it owned by us or is it owned by the company? There's definitely some things that we consider owned by us, and that's basically, so the way we sort of structure our build our data is like we consider like a medallion type of architecture where we have the raw data that comes from our data sources, whatever we can siphon off of our POS system or our CRM system, CDP, things like that. And then we try to turn that into data models that are useful to us in general. And that's, part of those kind of value add extra projects. And or extra pieces of a project we're doing is to go and say, okay, well, we're going to use this type of data often. So we might as well make a more standardized version of it. We consider that to be owned by us. All of the downstream things that are using it are dependent on that, and if there's something wrong with it, it's our responsibility to fix or maintain it. And yeah, so that's kind of where we draw the line. If we built it, we own it, but it's typically built off of data that I would say the company owns or the customer owns in a sense.
Right. But if you transfer to somewhere else now, how do you how do you think this data will belong to the device or processing or belong to the like you applying a pattern belong to the pattern and follows or you just discard it, which is a totally waste. Is
Yeah. So, can you give me an example of like what you think, like transferring the data somewhere, like you mean
Yeah,
into
for
an app
example,
or?
so you are working for MIT, right? Okay, you are, for example, if you are a graduate student, you're gonna graduate, right? And then you're
Mhm,
gonna find a job. Where you're doing that, you already own certain part of processing and the data. Now,
mhm,
Harvard Business School says, hey, like a crime says, we are open 3D and we're going to select you or hire you as our chief executive
sure.
data processing analysis. Now, your technique going to be part of the technical belongings, right? Now,
Right.
sort of like a marriage. Is before marriage or after marriage, and then how do you do it? How,
Okay, so
like
I mean, am I getting it right that you're talking more about the intellectual property of like how I would build that, not the actual necessarily the bits and bytes itself, but like,
actually, yeah, actually, I want to ask you is that how do you so data itself has a value, and
mhm,
where you processing it, you select the population in certain purposes, of course, that's all different categories.
yeah,
But the value that you created, um, it was going to be belong to the private sector or the popular like a public community
right.
uh, society owned, or how do you how do you think that you're able to control it and then in the certain regulation that are according to.
Right. I'll be honest, I've never really thought of it like that. That's a good question. I mean, so I guess, I mean, the only thing that kind of comes to mind is the idea of kind of taking some of the stuff that we've done, and if there's an application outside of something that's sort of specific to our business, that we could outsource, or open source, sorry, a package or something like that to kind of like give back that value back to the community. I mean, I think that that's something that we've considered. We've never really found a really good candidate in our kind of package library we've built for that.
So are
I
you
don't know.
thinking of
Yeah.
like a trade-off or something?
I mean, well, I mean, like, there's no legal sense in which I'm allowed to share our data, but I can
Understand.
definitely share, what we've done with it and try to give back that way, in a sense. I'm not sure there's anything that we could do other than that type of activity.
Okay.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Thank you. And I just want to
Addition of
make
that,
sure
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I just want to make sure to get to some of the anonymous questions too. But there was one that was going back to the Shiny app that you had created and
Mhm.
asked if the marketing of it as a real-time Pulse Shiny app or like naming it had some role in the success of the application. And if you think about like the marketing of a Shiny app.
Yeah, I mean, we tried to build, we drew a logo. We tried to make it seem in a sense as different as possible from the usual experience that the stores had with reporting. So we're sort of coming from, and it's still pretty widespread in the company, a lot of like old school BI, like Oracle BI publisher type of reports where you go in, you click some drop downs, you hit run, and 2 minutes later a spreadsheet comes up. That type of thing is what the stores have been used to for a very long time. It's what everybody has cut their teeth on. It's the way they think about consuming data, and we wanted to show them as something as absolutely different as possible. And so we definitely did choose UI themes. We created a logo. We have a little loading screen. We used a lot of kind of visualizations and color schemes that line up with marketing materials and sort of internal documents and things like that have been circulated. We try to make it as much of a packaged experience for users as we possibly could. And that was a very conscious decision on our part to make sure that this felt different and felt new, so that we could get users excited about the idea that not only the idea of this app, but the idea that there could be others like this if they have interesting problems to bring to us. This is the type of thing they could get.
That's really interesting. Is it with like all the company branding too?
Mm.
Yeah.
Definitely, we have company branding on it, but again, we're trying to make it. We're trying to make it. Kind of. yeah, we're trying to make it as if it's like an app they downloaded from the App
Yeah.
Store, although they didn't. That was the kind of look and feel. We even showed users how to kind of post it as a shortcut on their phones or whatever, so it opens full screen. It feels like a PWA. We've structured it like a PWA. So yeah, like it was very, very purposeful. There is a little bit of Harry Rosen branding, but it's more, the
Yeah.
branding of the app, the branding of our team.
Nice. Just curious, what does PWA mean?
Oh, sorry, progressive web app.
Okay.
So it just feels like there's no browser,
Yeah.
browser URL kind of tab or anything.
I see. Cool. Sam, I see you asked a question on setting expectations with leadership. You want to jump in?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep, can hear you.
Perfect. So just a quick question on how do you set expectations with these Shiny apps? For example, you create with leadership or users to avoid feature creep. Sometimes users, they want, if there's additional features that can throw the project off course and really add resources that you might not have the capacity for.
Oh yeah, we have a word for this. It's called the kitchen sink app, right? Where the second you start talking to people about it, they start imagining it's this catch-all application that can solve all of the world's problems, and they start asking and asking. So I mean, to me, the biggest thing is like, be absolutely clear what the objective is, and that's, so we do a lot of work to try to, and again, I don't think we're perfect at this, but when we're having those initial conversations with a line of business that's supposed to use it, we're trying to keep the group relatively small, and we're trying to focus on describing the problem and kind of putting that in like a problem statement and like a vision statement for what the app is supposed to be, so that we can go to, and every time we meet with them, we're sort of referring back to that as many times as we possibly can, to kind of hammer it home that this is what we're trying to do, right? And yeah, I see other people have seen the kitchen sink app come to life. So yeah, it's really like a people management problem, and it's really tempting as a developer of an app to want to solve people's problems. So you have to manage yourself and your team as much as you have to manage the people asking for this stuff, because your developers get excited to solve problems. They get excited when people are excited about their work. It's really easy to feature creep, and so we try that kind of agile approach of like, let's all agree on a vision statement and let's iterate towards it. And every time we release something, we ask, is this doing that? And if something could be done better, it means, okay, well, let's revise our problem statement a little bit to see if that fits in it, and let's add to our vision statement a little bit to see if it fits. And the second we kind of hint that like this isn't fitting, like if there's too many ands in your vision statement, probably even more than one, you're starting to think, should this be another app, right? Keeping things separate is pretty critical. Teaching people to want and understand that is hard.
Thanks, Jay. I'm not sure how to ask this as a question, but I remember when we were talking maybe a few months ago, you talked about like when you decide to reproduce reports or keep reports, and you call it internally like Jay's razor.
Yes. Yeah.
And I was curious if you could just talk a little bit about that, because I think it'd be really helpful.
Yeah, sure. So we kind of have this plan over the next few years to migrate all of our reporting into the kind of platform we're building. We call it Misura. It's the Italian word for to measure. We do a lot of made to measure clothing in the company, so it kind of resonates with people, and has a kind of cool double meaning. So we did an audit. This is probably a few years ago, pre-pandemic. We did an audit. I think we had 1,000 reports. It was like 900 and something reports sitting out there. And the tool that the development team has been using forever doesn't track who uses them. So we're sitting there going like, we're not migrating 900 reports. Right? There's just no way. So yeah, we kind of developed this technique where rather than migrating a report, I sit there and go, okay, you guys use this report. Show me how you make a decision that impacts the business from the data in this report, right? So a good question I ask is like, okay, so imagine you pulled this up and I went, oh crap, I just found out this data is wrong. And I gave you brand new numbers and you never seen them before. How does your week change? How does your month change? Are you doing something different now that I've shown you new numbers? And if you can't reasonably convince me that your week or your month has changed because the report was wrong, it's a useless report and we should not be looking at it, right? So, trying to get at, plugging information into actions and into decisions and really kind of like stripping down reports that aren't doing that. Like if you're just looking at a report in order to pass on that information to somebody who's passing it on, it's just kind of this game of telephone or whatever it is. It's time to go, right? So I use the analogy a lot of like, we're not historians, right? Looking at a report about what happened last week, you can't change it. The sales were what they were, we sold what we did, the customers came in, you can't do anything, right? So unless you're using that to figure out what you're doing next week, right? So the analogy I always use is like the weather report is a report everybody uses, right? Everyone knows how to use it. Most people use it every day, right? What does the weather report do? It tells you how to make decisions. Do I need an umbrella? Do I need a sweater? Should I drive or walk to work? It's forward looking. It's a forecast. Who looks up the weather from last Tuesday? Nobody. Who cares? It already happened, right? And so I'm trying to get people to think about reporting more like the weather report. It should be, if it's not directly telling you what's going to happen, you should be thinking about what do I know about what's going to happen because of this report, and how can I make a decision to accommodate that or to take advantage of it. So yeah, that's kind of the razor. When people can't answer that question with enough authority, I'm like, yeah, we're killing this one, and it's gone. And yeah, so that's kind of our approach. It's been pretty successful.
I love that. I was thinking that about some of the, like, I don't know, even Salesforce reports or things that we look at. I see, Libby, you said you had a similar way to prioritize reports. Do you want to jump in and add that?
Sure. Yeah. Oh, my camera's forward. How embarrassing. Yeah. So our org, I was just part of kind of a modernization effort where we were going through and prioritizing things, and there was some prioritization that already existed. At least the logic behind it did. And as we were going through all of these reports, just like pouring through a billion reports, that there's only one that was high priority. That was like, top level priority. Only a few that were kind of mid-level, and everything else was either, like you said, outdated or didn't meet the criteria. And the criteria was kind of like, who looks at it and then what decision are they making with it? And if it's not ELT that's looking at it, if it's not executive leadership team that's looking at it, then it's like an automatic bump down kind of. And then if you're not making an actual either strategic or operational decision with it on a daily basis, and it's not updated, on a regular, time scale, then yeah, why are you looking at it? And you kind of like already spent so much time just looking at all of these reports that it kind of blows my mind that like, oh, we can spend like 4 months digging through these 50 to 100 reports just to find one that somebody actually looks at every day. The data's up to date. And moving forward with less feels like corporate minimalism to me, and I really like it.
Yeah, it's freeing.
Right? It's freeing, yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Andrew, I see you had a follow-up question to this report conversation as well, if you want to jump in.
Yeah, I imagine that there are many vendors who would like to sell you a reporting system to put all of the things in. I'm curious to hear more about how what you were looking for and how you're getting it. You mentioned it's a custom thing, so I imagine it's not just a straight off-the-shelf thing.
Well, yeah, so it's built on RStudio Connect, actually. So that's, that's the vendor, and one of the reasons I'm here today is, through just conversations through speaking with our studio. But yeah, I mean, we've been approached by, I mean, you name it, Tableau, Looker, Power BI, like everyone wants to sell us their solution. My typical kind of question I ask is like, how well can I version control this? How well can I, like, how flexible is it in terms of, writing to a custom data model? Like, how can I incorporate machine learning? I've never got a good answer on all or even most of those types of questions from most vendors that come to us and try to sell us their solution. And so, I stick to my guns. Like, I love a code first approach to problem solving. I think it has so many benefits that outweigh the, to me, slightly extra time it usually takes to get a project off the ground. And so far we've had like nothing but success kind of building and managing our own code that it's almost like, I kind of know how these conversations are going to end before they begin. um, I don't know if that kind of answers your question, but like our platform is really just a way of hosting and orchestrating Shiny apps and Plumber APIs and things of that nature. We're sort of always on the lookout for good ways to do that in the back end, and RStudio Connect has been a great way to do that in the back end. But in the front end, like what those things do, like the kind of logic layer and presentation layer in that scheme has always been code first, definitely. If one day we move to Python or whatever, maybe, I don't know, but it will probably still always remain, uh, code we build and code we maintain and code we kind of pour our heart and soul into. I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Oh, you might be muted, Andrew.
Thanks. Yeah, does answer.
Okay, great.
Thank you. I see a few other questions popping into the chat right now. AJ, I see you just asked one. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, just how do you manage user adoption, right? So there's so many new things rolling out, as you said, looking forward reports like a weather style approach. How do you make sure people are up to date on the latest and the greatest? Are there regular training sessions or?
So yeah, I mean, we're a small team and it's kind of hard to manage the time it takes to sort of do training sessions, but we're really trying. And I think like the more time we put into it, the more value we get out of it. So it's something I'm trying to steer us to do more of. Great documentation, like, a lot of the applications we build have documentation kind of like built into them as like a little user guide tab or something like that with what's hoping to be a lot of information. But we also, I mean, and this is something relatively new, like we monitor the logs of who's using what app, and we can sort of see, like in RStudio Connect has a connector to Postgres that we leverage a lot of kind of reporting on in Postgres internally to see like who is using our apps, how long are they spending on them, that sort of thing. We're also trying to develop, we're working on a package right now that's going to help us kind of do a little bit more fine-grained reporting, so we can see like what features of apps are being used by users, and that's hopefully going to help us ask better questions when we go back to them for feedback. So the feedback mechanism built into the sort of agile process is really helpful, but it's better when we can say, hey, look, we built this thing you guys asked for and this tab never gets touched. Like, is it because you realize you didn't see, you didn't like, you thought it would be more useful, or it's not providing the information you thought it would, or what is it, so that we have a bit more focused questions, because right now we have to kind of pull that out of users, and that's not as efficient. But yeah, I mean, user adoption is critical, and the hard part is capturing people's attention, and then the other hard part is figuring out what to do when you don't have it. And so, yeah, I guess another one I'll lean on is like getting leadership on board with this. So, like our president and COO is a big proponent of our team. He does a lot of work to convince others that they should care about the reporting that we're giving him and them. And so like that's another one that's been a really big help in terms of growing adoption of our products.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Kind of on that note, in terms of like sharing best practices, I see Eric, you asked a question as well. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, it's definitely related, but as your team finds great solutions, develops great apps or cool analytical pipelines, what are efforts that your group takes to make sure that you're sharing that knowledge across and that, people are learning from each other? I don't know if you have like internal user group sessions or shared learnings or things like that. What's been your approach to that?
That's a very apropos question. I swear, like are you spying on us? Like we recently, so we kind of in 2019 had this idea of like starting a center of excellence for analytics, and the pandemic kind of put a kibosh to that for a little while. But we recently kind of took that off the shelf and we're trying to build that up. And part of it is like, there's other people in the organization who are either power users of our output, or they're doing kind of analytics in their area, or they're just basically just data driven people. And we want to create a kind of space for them to share knowledge and things. We've actually chosen, and this might sound terrible, and I bet a bunch of people are going to get goosebumps when I say this, we chose Jira Service Desk as the kind of platform to do this. So we have a place for people to come in and write requests or ideas or whatever, and also just see work going through. So if we have a release for an app, we have a ticket for that release that people can kind of watch the progress of. But really for internally, if somebody's doing something, they can put it in the service desk and talk to any member of the analytics center of excellence and get some advice. What data would I use for this? Like, have you guys seen this result? Does this make sense to you? And so on and so forth. We're sort of just in the infancy of that kind of experiment, but that's kind of our solution to that in a sense. Is to see if we can create a little kind of shared space for people that are either analysts by title or analysts by trade, to kind of just talk about this stuff. I don't know how far reaching it'll get. It's kind of, again, still brand new, but that's kind of our idea, and having that that knowledge base start to grow and build in a single place with some searchability and with Confluence kind of keeping documents and whatever together. I'm hoping we kind of create that, but that's so far our idea to solve that problem.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Having that central place people can go to is so much better than just typical send that person a message or send them an email. That gets lost in the abyss of who knows what.
Exactly.
So
and no one can search for it. Somebody new comes on board. How do you find, so I know Jira, a lot of people pull their hair out over Jira, and I've done the same thing many times, but it's kind of like, what's that old Winston Churchill quote? It's like, Jira is the worst solution for this, except for all the other ones or whatever. And like, so far, we've had a lot of success with it internally. And so, we're hoping to kind of keep that, but it does have its frustrations. But yeah, I mean, I think the benefits, like you're sort of hinting at, like, will hopefully outweigh the frustrations. So.
Cool.
Great
I'm
question.
curious for people listening in too, if you have your own community, like user groups, what you use or how you share information internally too. If you want to put it in the chat or just share tips with each other. Libby, I think you had a follow-up on the features that are being used in certain apps. Do you want to jump in and add context to that one?
Yeah, it was just a selfish question. So you were talking about being able to look at what features are being used, what tabs they're clicking on. I stopped using Connect with my organization right before the Connect API came out. So I'm aware of it, and I was like, oh, this is so cool, but I didn't get to use it from an org side. So I was wondering if you were like building server-side events that you were harvesting, or if this is in the Connect API somewhere I'm not aware of. I'm just curious.
Yeah, so it's actually separate to the Connect API, but we are putting it in the same physical database. So the Postgres database that Connect is feeding to, we've created basically like an extension database for that. And the reason for that is we're hoping to take advantage of some connections. Like if we know a user's GUID, then we can use that to say this user did these actions or whatever, and we can connect those things together. Again, we're still sort of an experimental phase, so we're not sure we can do as much of those things as we want. But that was kind of the idea. But really, at its core, this is going to be a front end package, so a package that we can kind of load into a Shiny app and basically call almost like a logging function, inside observe events or things like that to say this is happening, the user clicked here, the user did this, and that's basically gonna connect to a Plumber API that's gonna do the hard work of writing this to the right log or whatever. So essentially, we're gonna be creating just a giant, almost like Google Analytics ripoff for our thing. And I know some people have even, and we consider this, some people even connected Google Analytics to their Shiny apps. We tried it out. We could never get it to work. Yeah, so look it up. If you can figure out how to get it to work, please let me know. We could never quite follow along. But yeah, so that's the idea. Is we'll have this Plumber API just listening for any old event from any one of these things. And the trick is we're trying to make it as low overhead as possible, so it doesn't slow anything down at all.
Right. You're not like harvesting billions and billions.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, so
really
it's going to be on the developer to choose where to put that in the code and to make sure that we care, like what we care about is being recorded.
Yep, not just everything.
So yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, Shiny app developers have to be half data scientist, half like UX designer, and I'm never prepared to be a UX designer. So this part, the like harvesting information about the way people are using it, is more intuitive for me than like designing it to be better usable from the outset.
Yeah.
Maybe we should all learn about UX design. Well, thanks, Jay.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you. And I shared a link in the chat that was like usage tracking meetup recording with the Connect API, but I'm imagining that Eric, you probably have some great resources for that too, or people from your podcast as well, if you want to share any others in the chat.
Yeah, I definitely have lots of thoughts about that. I'll put some links in the chat. Yep.
Cool, thank you. Tiffany, I see you asked a question earlier too. Do you want to jump in?
Hi, yeah, you just mentioned that you had a smaller team, and I guess how do you manage everyone's timelines and trying to work on one project or multiple projects and deliver that to the people that you need to get it to?
Yeah, I mean, so our team actually, all shameless plug, we're hiring right now. If you're based in Canada, like we're programming in R and Shiny, go to harryrosen.com, look at the careers page. You'll find data product developer as an open position. So, our team should be 4 people. It's 3 at the moment. It's a tiny team, right? And, so managing people's time is kind of hard in the sense that it's a small team, but it's easy in the sense that it's a small team. And we're typically going to work on one project at a time, right? So that's how we block it, and we just take a very agile approach. So there's typically a planning sprint that we take on where we're all as a team listening and talking to somebody that has a problem that we need to solve, and then we're kind of building a backlog, building some sprints, working through it. At each iteration, we're trying to show people what have we created. Is this helpful? Is this going to help you towards your goal? So Jira in the back end with our user stories and kind of issues and things like that is really, I think, the way I manage people's time is assigning and that sort of thing. But because we work so collaboratively, I don't really have the it's not really a task on my plate to care about what somebody's doing, because I kind of know what they're doing at any given time. there are instances where we kind of split up and do little things if there's a lot of maintenance or something that needs to be done. But again, I have a little view in Jira I can stare at and say, why is this sticking or whatever. So that's kind of how we do it. I'm kind of excited and scared for the challenge of doing that when we have a few more people in the team and we have like multiple projects on the go at once. That's going to be a little bit more challenging, but agile is a little bit easier because the team holds each other accountable for what they're supposed to do. If that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Thank you all for the great questions too. I was curious, Jay, as you look ahead to the next year or so, what's something that you're most excited about?
Oh yeah. So we recently made the decision to move our data stack over to a Google Cloud storage and Databricks. So that's really, really exciting for me to have, kind of a fully managed Spark ML flow on Google Cloud Storage from what I would call a pretty, traditional data warehouse type of model. Though not so much, but a relational database has a lot of limitations in terms of like, more modern applications that are providing data to our ecosystem. And so I'm really excited to kind of move over to that architecture and kind of, the work to convert all our existing applications to feed into that might be a challenge, but it opens the door to so much, right? Like most of our digital ecosystem now is all just done through JSON, right? And putting that in a relational database is a nightmare. It's always a challenge. We have to make a lot of concessions and in terms of the way we approach modeling data. We won't have to as much anymore. And so that's what I'm really excited about. So that's probably going to change a lot, almost everything about how we solve problems. And, I love a challenge and I love learning a new tool. So that's what I'm most excited about for sure.
That's great. I know we're quickly coming up to the top of the hour, but just to go back a second, I know you mentioned you're hiring right now.
Yes.
What do you think is, I guess, what is most important to you in like hiring for that role, or what is something you look for in the people you hire?
I mean, I kind of just mentioned it. It was like if you're a little bit like me, you like to learn a new tool. Obviously we work really closely together. So being open-minded, being self-reflective, being able to give good feedback, like being able to contribute an idea about how we can do work better is a really critical part. And that's, as much as I'd love, some absolute like banging our expert with shiny experience coming out the wazoo. If you can't work nice with another team and your code isn't readable and this and that, I 100% wouldn't find usefully, right? Because we have to work together. I might have to maintain your code sometime, and if you can't tell me what you're doing, it's not useful to me. So we're really looking for, teamwork, collaboration, communication, and at very minimum, some R and programming and Git experience.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I see Libby said, well, I wish I lived in Canada. But I will be sure to share it with the LinkedIn network there too.
Yeah, that would be great.
What's the best way for people to stay in touch with you, and if they have follow-up questions? Is it LinkedIn?
Yeah, LinkedIn is good. Like maybe put a note when you if you want to join my network, put a note that you saw me on this thing here, just so I can sift you from the salespeople that hound me all the time. When you get that director title, I found like it's like probably 95% of the requests that I get are just somebody who will immediately just try to sell me something. And so I do have to sift through that a lot. So yeah, a quick note will help me not ignore your request for a connection. Sorry to sound obtuse there, but
No, we'll be sure to add that in there. I won't put your LinkedIn in the chat then, just so it doesn't go to YouTube.
sure. Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you. I know we just at the top of the hour, but thank you so much for joining us, Jay. It was
No,
great
thank you for
to
having
hear
me.
your experience and learn from you. Really appreciate it.
Of course, and thanks for everybody's great questions and conversation. That was fantastic.
Thank you all. Have a great rest of the day.